Israel's Ashmuz takes on Tajikistan's Aliyev in the UFC's first fight of the year. Aliyev is a grappler, he has good takedowns, good top control, not super aggressive on top, but he doesn't have to win, and he did get a ground and pound finish in his Contender Series fight. It's been 2 years since he last fought, but he's only just turned 24, so he's still very young. And although he didn't do much damage to Rafael Alves, he did comfortably win, which is impressive to do as a 22-year-old in your UFC debut. Ashmuz, on the other hand, he looks quite small against his past opponents to me, although he is quite jacked. He is a wrestle boxer who, as Chris Duncan proved, can be outboxed and can be out-wrestled. He, to me, is a fairly average mid-level guy. Although he does have power, he is a competent grappler with a wrestling background, and he can go 3 rounds. So for that reason, I can't really bet Aliyev at minus 400. Ashmuz is not a can, and Aliyev, as yet, is not a proven killer. The fight probably goes over 1.5, potentially to decision, unless Ashmuz knocks him out or Aliyev has improved his aggressiveness on the ground in the past 2 years, which is highly likely. But yeah, to see which overs and unders I play next week, you can access all my bets at patreon.com/bcbet. Dudikova vs. Klein. I haven't taken this. As you'll come to learn, I have little interest in women's fights. If I do take this, it'll probably be closer to the event. So again, join my Patreon to stay abreast of any bets I place. Patreon.com/bcbet. Gaziashulov versus Lopez. Lopez, he can get hit, he can get dropped. Footwork is not amazing, and there are a few holes in his striking defense. He got knocked down in his last fight, moving backwards in a straight line. He got knocked out badly by Brenson Ribeiro in his Contender Series fight. In terms of offense, he has decent power, above average volume, but his technique isn't the cleanest. Kind of the opposite to Gadzi, whose volume and power I'm not impressed by, but at least he throws punches and kicks with nice technique. The problem with Gadzi is he only really seems to be comfortable if he can keep at kickboxing range, whereas Lopez, he won't mind crashing in a bit, making it dirty, making it uncomfortable for Gadzi. Of course, that opens Lopez up to counters, which Gadzi is capable of, so the stand-up battle is interesting. And Gadzi gets called a striker because he has knockouts on his record and he beat up that fat shit Medina, but he's actually more of a grappler. He's won more rounds with top control in his last 3 fights than he has with striking. He has takedown and trip ability, not super high level like you might expect from a Dagestani, but he has it in his locker and he can be effective with it, and that is how he won his last fight. I haven't seen many takedown attempts on Lopez, but he did defend a couple in his last fight, and he's gotten takedowns and submissions of his own in the past 2. He has a kind of chunky strength to him, and might be tough for Gadzi to get him down without expending too much energy. So yeah, while it's hard to make a solid prediction, I'm leaning towards Gadzi to get it done. Better technique, both standing up and grappling. But equally, Lopez is strong. He has more power, more volume, and has his own grappling chops. Round 1 KO, either way, is on the cards. But to be honest, I can see the overhitting, and this potentially being a prolonged shitfest. Gustafsson versus Parsons next. Gustafsson, he loves the clinch. His primary strategy seems to be cage grinding, and he has no shame about it. He doesn't just stall, though. He uses it to get in short punches and knees, and he's good at generating power from that short distance. His last fight was in the Contender Series, where he dominated Pitlick against the cage and looked strong, although Pitlick didn't seem that good of a fighter. In his previous 2 fights, though, Gustafsson wasn't as dominant, and he was reversed against the fence a few times. His technique and variety of strikes is subpar, but he does throw power, and he is fairly durable. He went to absolute war with Lampinen. Parsons, on the other side, is underwhelming, I would say. He is a submission fighter, but doesn't have great takedowns. His striking technique is serviceable, but he has no real power. He's also held against the cage in his last fight against Oban Elliott, as well as being outstruck. And Semmelsberger even won the clinch battle till he got tired in round 2. Overall, Parsons is quite limited, and Gustafsson seems to have good takedown defense, or at least good enough to fend off Parsons. And I think you can hold him against the fence, get the better of the stand-up, just based on having more volume, power, willingness to come forward. I will say minus 200 is a bit steep, but if you want to see how I bet this fight, as always, join my Patreon, patreon.com/bcbet. Moises versus Ogden, both kind of similar styles in that they'll stay at range, stay defensively sound, throw single shots, and wait for takedown opportunities. Ogden has decent takedowns, so he controlled Rajabov and Hollowball fairly comfortably. I think it'll be hard for Moises to get a takedown, although it's definitely possible. While he did get smashed versus Saint-Denis, he did land a solid double leg at one point, and he has shown his clinch and trip ability versus Melky Costa. Equally for Ogden, might be tough to land a takedown of his own. But I'd wager if either of them does land one, it will be Ogden, who himself has never been taken down in the UFC. Well, he did end up underneath Leave It twice, once due to a slip and then once due to his own failed takedown attempt. The striking discussion is where this gets interesting, because Ogden in his first UFC fight got outstruck by Jordan Leavitt, of all people, who chewed up Ogden's leg. The interesting part, though, is that after losing this fight, he came out and then outstruck fucking Daniel Zellhuber using leg kicks as his main weapon. Against Bahamondes, Ogden was soundly beaten. He landed half as many strikes, but he was not completely outclassed, and he was never really hurt either. And he did land a fair number of head punches, potentially more than Bahamondes did himself. So, it wasn't all bad. And then against Motta, he put on a decent striking performance. Still not throwing volume, but landing solid single shots, and importantly, evading most of Motta's strikes. And note that his 2 losses, Leavitt was a southpaw and Bahamondes was switching stances constantly. Everyone he's beaten was orthodox, and Moises is orthodox. For Moises, I will say that he does have nice technique. He utilizes kicks well. He fucked up Ramirez with leg kicks, but he doesn't really have hands, doesn't have notable volume, speed, or power. And so in this fight, which may very well be a pure kickboxing battle, it's hard to justify him as this big of a favorite. Tulio versus Puteria up next, and Tulio is a massive favorite. I just think the line is too wide. Puteria can drop people. He dropped Bellato, he dropped Brocek, he outvolumed both as well. And yeah, he was destroyed by Pereira and expectedly lost a stand-up battle to Almeida. But Tulio is not like an elite guy who cuts through people. He's closer to the level of Bellato and Brocek. Yeah, Tulio could get Ihor down. He has decent top control. Cesar Almeida mounted Ihor at one point, so it's not like it's super difficult to do. But Tulio's takedowns, they're a bit laboured and awkward. He stays quite upright. He prefers throws and trips rather than ever trying to attack their hips or legs, and he's not always successful. And yeah, Tulio, he has hands too. He has knockout power. He could KO Pateria, but just think the line quite wide here. Jose Johnson versus Felipe Bunes up next. Johnson's second fight at flyweight, and he's absolutely massive for the division, 6 foot tall. The problem is he gets taken down a lot. Blackshear took him down fairly easily and twisted him. His last fight, he spent the majority of it underneath Almabayev. He did fairly comfortably beat Old Man and Heliger, but he was taken down 4 times. He did manage to work his way up. He did manage to reverse position from underneath a few times. And while he did spend the majority of the third round underneath Angeliga, he landed a hell of a lot of shots from the bottom before reversing position and getting the choke. So he's not a complete fish on the floor. He does have skills, but potentially he's too comfortable being on bottom. Bunes, he's definitely not on the level as Blackshear or Almabayev, who are both high-level grapplers. And ultimately here, I just think Johnson will be able to shuck off any takedowns. He will be able to reverse position if he gets to the floor, and he will win the stand-up battle. It just is a bit sketchy. Johnson, I think he's worse than minus 200 now. And he's just going back to his takedown defense, even in his contender series fights against Ronnie Lawrence, who, yeah, he's a good wrestler. But even against Cartwright, who's more of a striker, he's got taken down a lot. And Bunes can get takedowns. He took down Josh Van. He's got takedowns in his past fights. And he's no slouch on the feet with knockout power too. So it's not a complete can that Johnson's fighting here. And Johnson doesn't even really seem to hurt guys in the stand-up. So odds probably a bit wide here, even though Johnson probably does win. Next up, Puna versus Medic, both southpaws. Puna's second fight at welterweight after previously fighting at middleweight, and it's Medic's 4th welterweight fight after previously being a lightweight. Medic will be the faster, slicker striker, more versatile, probably land more, although he can be hit himself, and he was dropped by Semmelsberger and having a close fight with him before getting the KO. And Puna definitely has more power than Semmelsberger. The problem is he's quite one-dimensional. He's just spams that straight left. He doesn't really use his jab, doesn't use leg kicks, or any type of kicks really. There's a possibility that Medic easily figures him out and then gets to work. If the fight gets pushed up to the cage, I think Puna wins that battle there. But yeah, I won't say any more without revealing my bet, which, if you want to see it, as always, patreon.com/bcbet. Austin Bashi versus Christian Rodriguez. C-Rod here facing yet another prospect, yet another wrestler, and yet again he's the underdog. Bashi's wrestling is high level. He can hold his own on the feet too. He's not afraid to strike. And most importantly, perhaps, he has shown 5-round cardio in the past, which perhaps can allay any fears that he might fade, like Rosas and Bulgarian did. Having said that, I am still fearful, which is why I haven't bet on him yet. Should be noted, though, that the Bulgarian fight was a ridiculous robbery, and there's no rational world where C-Rod won that fight. So yeah, I might end up adding Bashi to a 2-leg parlay next week. Maybe, maybe not. The lock that you've all been waiting for. Roman Kopylov at minus 250 to beat Chris Curtis. They're both southpaws. Kopylov, I think, will be faster. He'll definitely be more versatile. He can fight at range, stay moving, and just stay out of Curtis's reach and frustrate him, as we've seen happen before. Curtis is slow, one-dimensional, pretty old now, and Kopylov just needs to avoid the left hand. I don't think Curtis will grapple, never has before, won't start now, and Kopylov has decent takedown defense anyway. He's defended loads in the past. Kopylov, I think he'll make reads on Curtis, who always fights the same. My only slight concern is cardio, but I think Kopylov does handily win here, whether a finish or decision. Al Hassan versus Almeida next. Almeida, quite a big favourite, understandably so, given that he's an elite kickboxer and Al Hassan is old, and this will likely be a stand-up fight, which Almeida comfortably wins. However, just as Al Hassan did in round 3 against Buckley, he could get Almeida to the fence, trip him up or take him down, and spend entire rounds on top. So at these low odds, I don't feel comfortable playing Almeida. I am interested in the overs and unders when they drop next week. I won't say which way, but if you want to know which one I play, as always, patreon.com/bcbet. Ponzinibbio versus Colston Harris up next in another old man fight. I see this as being probably a stand-up battle for the most part. Ponzinibbio has better technique and power, I would say, but I'll give Harris the speed edge. Ponzinibbio in his last fight, close decision loss to Muslim Salikov, back and forth. And before that, he was kind of able to hang with Kevin Holland before getting knocked out. And Kevin Holland was a lot bigger than him, and of course, faster, younger, stronger. Colston Harris in his last fight, nuked by Chaos Williams. He is a wily grappler as well, though. He can get people down in crafty ways. Not necessarily traditional takedowns, but yeah, crafty ways. Grab a neck, pull you down, that type of thing. But Ponzinibbio has never been submitted. In terms of the totals, I mean, this could finish in the first round. It could be a sloppy decision. It could finish any point in between, really. We'll see what the odds are like when they drop next week. As always, patreon.com/bcbet. Main event, and a rematch between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas, who last fought each other in 2019. That fight saw Ribas defend Dern's takedowns and outstrike her by a lot, as well as throwing her down to the mat twice. Maybe Ribas being a minus 200 favourite is a bit too much, but I think over 5 rounds she can probably melt Dern. Yeah, maybe Dern gets a takedown, round of top control, bit more grappling success than she has last time. But I think she'll struggle to get submission. I mean, Ribas has never been submitted. And over 5 rounds, I think she'll probably land double the number of strikes as Dern does. I mean, Dern's striking has improved. She did drop Lemos, who is one of the best strikers in the division, but equally Lemos did beat the shit out of her for the rest of that fight, and Dern does lose to basically every woman who's a better striker than her. I do have Ribas in a 2-leg parlay. I may live to regret it, as I usually do with women's MMA, but let's hope for the best. The UFC is not the only event on next week. LFA 199 is on Friday on UFC Fight Pass. I won't be making a video on that, but I will be taping the fights and placing bets. To access them, patreon.com/BCBet.